My name is Father David Howell. I'm from the Archdiocese of Southwark in London, and I'm delighted to be here in the Venerable English College where I studied for the priesthood. I was ordained in 2016 on the 16th of July, the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And my vocation story started when I was 18. That was the first time I thought of being a priest. I was from a Catholic family. My mum and dad used to go to Mass on Sundays, and I went to a Catholic school. I was an altar server, and I think as a child I had quite a sincere faith. But when I hit the teenage years, I started drifting and living a bit of a double life, which made me less and less satisfied. And so when I was 17, my grandmother, who was just such a lovely lady, I couldn't say no to her about anything. She was just too nice, and she was a woman of great faith. She said, "Why don't you go to Lourdes on a pilgrimage?" And it sounded a bit like a holiday in the south of France, nice weather, other young people. So I thought, okay, I'll do that. And it was a wonderful experience. I was only there for a week, but it was really transformative. I'd never disagreed intellectually with my faith, but it had just sort of drifted away and just become unimportant in my life. But going to Lourdes really changed that, because I met sick people who had great faith. We were looking after paraplegic pilgrims, and we had to do everything for them, sort of wash them, help them eat, do everything for them. And they were so happy. I think that's what really struck me. They were so peaceful and happy, and I wasn't. I was sort of a complicated teenager. And I thought, well, why? What do they have that I don't have? When sort of humanly speaking, I've got everything. And I also remember meeting a priest who had liver cancer, and he was so peaceful about his coming death. He just said very simply, "I've got 6 months to live." And I was shocked. I mean, how can this man be so peaceful about his death? And so I had several encounters during that week that really opened my heart to faith, which I suppose I'd always had, but had just drifted away. And suddenly it came back into the centre of my life. And it was wonderful moments of prayer together with the other young pilgrims. And I remember I came back home and was telling my mum all about this. And she said that we were in the kitchen and I was just talking. I was so sort of excited about my week. And then suddenly, I think her back was turned to me, and she said, suddenly I just went completely silent. And she turned round, and so I'd just fallen asleep, because it was such an exhausting week as well, because we were doing sort of night shifts in the hospital and things like that. So yeah, so that really got me back into my faith when I was 17. But it wasn't till about a year later that I first thought of the priesthood. And in that year, a few other things happened. I went with my dad to do some pro-life prayer vigils outside abortion clinics, which was a real sort of challenge to me at first. But it was very inspiring too when I went. I'd sort of get over my nerves. Because I remember on the first one we went to, a young woman actually changed her mind because of the presence of the people praying outside. I thought, this is amazing. And it was very peaceful and prayerful, and because I was worried it would be very aggressive and sort of political, but it wasn't at all. So that was, I think, an important moment for me to realise that my faith really did give me a different view on modern society, but in a compassionate way, not sort of condemning, but seeking to help. And also in that year, my grandmother gave me a book about Padre Pio, who's a wonderful saint. And I remember there was a line in that book that really struck me, where he said, "I'm only unhappy when I'm not suffering." And I thought, goodness, that's a crazy thing to say. What's he on about? But I think it got me thinking about the mystery of the cross. And then Easter that year, I remember very clearly the Easter Vigil ceremony and the Exultet, the hymn that's sung when the deacon holds the Easter candle. And one of the lines in that hymn is, "O happy fault, O felix culpa." And that really got me thinking, that even our faults, our sins, can be transformed by the grace of Christ. And our suffering can be transformed by the cross of Christ. And so that really helped me a lot to think about my faith more deeply. And then towards the end of that year, in June, yes, it was the 1st of June, 2005, I heard, I think the day before that my aunt was very sick, and my sister had been very sick as well with something. And so I just thought, well, I'm really going to pray for them. So I really prayed the rosary for them very intensely, more intensely than I'd ever prayed before, I suppose. And in that prayer, I became aware of a desire to be a priest that I'd never been aware of before. I didn't hear a voice. I remember the first bishop I had used to say, if you hear a voice, go to a psychiatrist. I didn't hear a voice, but I was just aware of this desire to be a priest that I wasn't aware of before. And I think because Christ is always calling us, but often we're not really listening. And we need something, we need an experience of the cross in our life or in the life of those we love to bring us to that point of prayer where we're really listening. And so that was when I first heard the call of Christ to the priesthood. And I wanted to go straight to the seminary. I'm glad I didn't, because I was only 18. Some people are already at 18, but I wasn't. I went to university where there was a very good chaplain, and about a dozen of us now from those years are now priests. He was a wonderful man, still is. And then after my university degree, I went to the seminary here, to the Venerable English College.